In the early 1600s, Russia ran out of emperors due to Ivan being a terrible dad, leading to the time of troubles, not helping which Poland-Lithuania, who were married recently, tried installing two different dudes named Dmitri. The history refers to as false Dmitri. In 1609, Sweden sent some mercenaries to help Russia, so the king of Poland-Lithuania, Sigismund III, got kind of sick of false Dmitri too, and launched an invasion of Russia himself. Despite having a smaller army, they were better equipped than the Russians and the mercenaries, so actually won a smashing success. Everything was kind of up for the Commonwealth. Moscow was captured, the Tsar Vasily was imprisoned, the nobles elected Sigismund's son Vladislav to be the new Tsar, but we ran into some problems because the nobles also wanted him to convert from Catholicism to Eastern Orthodox. Sigismund was a crazy religious fundamentalist and said absolutely not. But Siggy's sister, Anne, who despite being a Protestant was his very closest friend, walking up to him, smacking him upside the head, and saying, and I quote, "Hey dumbass, look at how much territory we would be getting if you weren't such a zealot shithead. You lost Sweden for the exact same reason. Stop being stupid." Siggy, with a piercing headache, was still very religious, so they eventually came to a compromise, with a second union of Brest, the first of which allowed Orthodox people in the Commonwealth to continue practicing their different ways as long as they can recognize the Pope, which led to the creation of the Greek Catholic and Ukrainian Catholic Church. Well, the Russians never met the Pope, why not? With Vladislav as the new Tsar of Russia, that meant Poland stretched all of Eastern Europe. Siggy was still not satisfied and wanted to be king of Sweden again, so he joined Denmark-Norway in the Kalmar War. Gustav II was caught off guard in a battle and ended up drowning. South Sweden, now kingless and disorganized, after a few more years of resistance, this led to a peace, where Poland only got the Baltic holdings and Finland, and Sweden goes to Denmark-Norway. They continued the Kalmar Union. Siggy was upset about this and expanding a Protestant kingdom, but not for too long because he died 17 years later. And his son Vladislav IV became King of Poland, Grand Duke of Lithuania, and Emperor of Russia. He married a Russian noblewoman to lock down that royal legitimacy. Unlike Russia, Poland was very uninterested in expanding into Siberia's frozen wasteland because they still had many affairs in Europe. Many settlers still went out anyway and became vassal states of the Commonwealth. In the times of the Counter-Revolution, the Commonwealth sided with Austria during the War of Bohemia and the Austrian-Scandinavian War, which led to the annexation of Prussia and Brandenburg being forced to be Catholic in the HRE. Augustus II came to the throne next. He is the namesake of the new Russian city of Augustenburg, and this is the time where all the Calvinists and Protestants were taken from their homes and deported to Siberia. Stanislaw I is probably one of the most famous Polish kings. He marched an army into the Polish parliament, and unlike Charles I of England, this didn't cause a civil war. In fact, it kind of helped the Commonwealth, changing the laws so the monarchy is no longer elected but inherited, and votes have to be majority rather than unanimously, so now stuff can actually be done. He was also given the title Defender of Faith because of the whole famous Austria was having their last stand surrounded by Ottoman troops in Vienna, and then the Winged Hussars arrived. The Winged Hussars being one of the best cavalry units to have ever existed in Europe. The Winged Hussars using Roman-style armor, and despite being a time period when guns started to become more common, they used lances, which they were able to improve by making them longer and hollow. Then the Commonwealth teamed up with Austria in another war against the Ottomans, securing the Crimean Peninsula, dividing most of the Balkans between the two of them. Greece also broke free independently from the war. Serbia, Romania, and Bulgaria became vassal states under the Commonwealth, with Serbia and Bulgaria having two of his youngest sons becoming kings of each, with Romania electing a different Russian noble. Montenegro was annexed by Austria directly, as well as the Ionian Islands, but there was some contention over Bosnia. Austria wanted to annex them, but Lithuania wanted them to be independent, but it was eventually decided it was kind of this weird situation where they're sort of independent, but not really. With the peace done, the British and French got a little concerned about the Commonwealth's rapid expansion. So sailing over, they got their own concessions. The British took Cyprus, the French took Rhodes and Crete. and the two propped the Ottomans up to be the balance of power in the area, in exchange for better trade opportunity. Paul I hated that, but tried to expand other ways, like trying to colonize Trinidad and New Cortland, which lasted 10 years, or even the Gambia, which they lost to Scotland. Nothing much happened under Stannis II, Siggy IV, or Casimir V. Stanislaus III was king during the time of Napoleon declaring himself emperor, and him and the rest of Europe said, "What? You can't do that. You can't just say you're emperor." And Napoleon was like, "Why not?" "You make a valid point," declaring that his new primary title as the Tsar or Emperor of Czechoslovakia, uniting the crowns of Poland and Russia. Eventually really needing that because the Commonwealth was invaded by Napoleon and installed Frederick Augustus of Saxony as Augustus III of Poland. But thanks to Russia's crap weather, Napoleon was repelled, and Stannis became emperor again. His son Casimir VI was emperor at the time of the Great Game, when the Commonwealth and British tried meeting up with each other, taking over Central Asia and India, but they were stopped by Persia, as well as the Siberian vassal states were reorganized into the Republic of Siberia. His son Casimir VII was a very conservative reactionary man who hated the power of the parliament and stopped them from reforming him out of power. Meanwhile, the Baltic states finally just ignored the emperor and invaded the Ottomans, kicking them out of most of Europe except for Thrace. Casimir, after forcing the parliament to basically be ceremonial, spoke out about the breaking of the balance of power, which eventually led to him being assassinated via grenade in the car of his only son, Casimir, so his daughter became the empress, and the second, marrying Leopold, the Duke of Albanian, having 2 kids before he died of hemophilia, of the house of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. The Commonwealth tried invading the Japanese Siberian territories and failed horrendously. Looking incredibly weak, this led to Italy invading Albania, but Albania was allied to Serbia, Bulgaria, and Romania, who were still technically vassals of the Commonwealth, and both Greece and Austria-Hungary decided to join Italy to get some territory as well. The Ottomans, despite fighting a war with Greece very recently, decided to join them as well, which led to the capture of Crete, which led to France joining the war. The German Republic, or the Confederation of the Rhine, wanted to expand both east and west, and they striked France by going through Belgium, which brought the UK into the war, starting World War I. Notably, this led to the last charge of the Winged Hussars, which German miniguns mowed them down near Danzig. The Germans were fighting to cut the Commonwealth off of their coastline, but the majority of the fighting against the Commonwealth happened in the Crimean Peninsula, which fighting bogged down so bad leading to trench warfare, and the Earl Cardigan, which were leading British troops, inventing cardigan like the thing people wear. War went on for 5 years and the army was exhausted, but Anne refused to surrender. So the commander of the army, Edward mutinied and marched the army into the Polish parliament and forced her to abdicate. With no way out, she did so peacefully, leading to Czechoslovakian-Lithuanian Commonwealth becoming a republic. Edward pulled out of the war and became president for about a year and a half before instability and no one really knowing what kind of republic they wanted kind of came up. Communist forces, led by Ladislaw Gomulka, refused to cooperate with Edward, who was becoming more and more of a dictator, which led to the Commonwealth Civil War, in which Ukraine unsuccessfully broke away, Estonia, Finland, and even the Siberian Republic broke away and took over the Polish territory up to the Ural Mountains. It was basically the communists against everyone else, and the everyone else didn't have any unifying force. There were people that were actually loyal to Edward, there were people that wanted to establish a Catholic theocracy, there were people that wanted to become president themselves. There's even people that wanted to reinstall Anne as a constitutional monarch, in which she was in house arrest at the time, and the communist forces found her in Kiev.
You wouldn't dare attack a queen!
I don't believe in queens. You think freedom is something that you can give or take on a whim. But to your people, freedom is just as essential as air.
Then Ladislav was shot by a woman named Fanny, living just long enough for the Reds to take control of the Commonwealth, picking his hand-picked successor, Rosa Luxemburg. Eventually this led to the interwar period, Austria and the Ottomans were carved up, Yugoslavia was formed, Constantinople became an international city, France got basically all the major islands in the Mediterranean but Cyprus, Corsica, Sardinia, Sicily, Crete, Rhodes. The Commonwealth was able to even grab Silesia. The several Slavian Lithuanian People's Commonwealth had to pull themselves in the 21st century, kicking and screaming. A funny-looking chubby guy in Germany took power, and he hated that was going on in the world, and teamed up with another chubby, funny-looking guy in Italy, and they wanted to expand their powers leading to World War II. Rosa Luxemburg was killed on the way fleeing from Warsaw to Moscow. The interim president, Ernest Toller, was not very effective, so he was couped by Nestor Makhno, an anarchist taking control of the Commonwealth and pushing Germany back, finishing the war and just in time because Nestor passed away in 1947, being replaced by fellow anarchist Leah Fieldman, who saw the modernization of the Commonwealth and democratized it, leading to the election of Bozo Charlotte, who was the first practicing Jewish person elected in the Commonwealth. And he saw the Cold War between authoritarian China and democratic US. Leah became president again for a while, trying to pull the Commonwealth to be neutral, but was replaced by Golda Meir, who joined NATO and allowed American nukes to be placed in the Urals. This led to the Yugoslavian missile crisis. Golda refused to back down, but thanks to JFK, they were able to come to an agreement, and everyone in the world life expectancy was knocked down by 30 years, as well as general unrest and breaking down of free speech led to her losing the election to Ephraim Katsker. But the party fight was pretty boring, and he lost to Stanislav Ostowik, who served until his death in 1982, and former football club owner Stefan Messner led the first right-wing party victory in the Commonwealth since the Revolution. And during this time, the descendant of Frederick Augustus tried claiming the throne of the Commonwealth. Maria Emanuel led a push to try and get elected as the new king, which only got 18% of the vote in a referendum, which eventually leads us into modern day. Today's Yugoslavian Lithuanian Commonwealth, or just the Commonwealth as everyone calls it, is part of NATO, and the EU uses the euro. It is a parliamentary federal republic of 5 different republics within it: Poland, Lithuania, Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia. Capital and largest city is Warsaw, the largest city in all of Europe by size and population. And the future is looking pretty decent for it. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down below, and any other fact I got wrong.